Dalia Maori, it's good to have you
Hello.
on the Lifeshot podcast. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
You know what? You seem quite relaxed. Is there
I
something?
am
What are you taking? Can we all have a bit of that? Whatever you're
not
taking.
taking anything. I had a break in my clinic today, so I've had two patients just before I'm speaking to you, and I have another two after you. And so I
Busy,
thought
busy.
I'd stick you in the middle. Yeah,
Brilliant.
well, I'm relaxed. Well, I like doing clinic. My children are downstairs, so I can focus 100% on something, which is a treat these days, being able to focus just on one thing
Mm,
without having to multitask. And there's been benefits to my life with lockdown for sure.
mm.
I can't say it's all bad in
Well,
terms of not having to do the school run and things like that.
that's one of the benefits, because I also think that there's a lot of benefits, and I think there's a few posts in the newspaper about more time with family, just not stressing, not commuting to work. So besides the school run, what else do you think's a benefit at the moment?
Um, Gosh, so many. I mean, if I'm thinking about my patients, it's quite incredible to have a glimpse into other people's lives and see that actually what I've said all along. And I was just saying to a patient last night who's a very overweight gentleman who really wants to do better in terms of his weight, that he's been made to feel his whole life that he's overweight because he's lazy or he can't stick to anything. It's not true at all. This man is not lazy. He works more than a full-time job. He's there for his family. He raises his kids. He's absolutely not lazy. People struggle to find the time in modern life to move. And I think something we've seen in lockdown is actually people want to move. People really want to move. They just struggle to find the time to do it. And now they've got the time. So patients we were trying to get enough steps in the day. We were trying to get them to eat well. Suddenly that 3-hour commute per day is gone, and they're making soup, or they're making stews, and they're making lovely food, and they're trying new recipes, and they're going for long walks, and they're
I love that.
and patients who are having anxiety attacks, like commuting from Cambridge to London or going on the tube, anxiety attacks have vanished.
Wow,
So a lot of
amazing.
people's mental health, there are definitely huge challenges to our mental health in lockdown
Yeah.
of a different species to what people were challenged with before, which was these chronic kind of erosive
Mm.
impact on mental health, with the having to go all the time, and not having time to just stop. And so it's definitely been a gift in that aspect for sure.
It's good. So I suppose, like you just said, there's different aspects of the stress. So for some people, obviously, the lockdown is like, oh wow, it's a break. This is awesome. Um, and at least initially. So I remember watching this comedic thing on Facebook. I can't remember her name. She's an American comedian lady, and she does a lot of videos. And she's like, "Oh no, lockdown, oh it's so terrible." And she's like one of these people who's likes to be by herself, and she's like doing this skits about, "Oh, it's so great now. I don't have to go out this weekend. I don't have to make excuses and all this stuff." So initially, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome. I don't have to have. I've got no plans. I don't have to be anywhere. It's just like pretty cool." But then now I'm like, okay, I've had enough of that now. I
Mm,
kind of want to get
mm,
out again and go and do something. And I suppose
mm.
there's the other aspect of people who are maybe in their 70s and 80s who are like, they're so bored, they got no one visiting them, they're isolated. That's got to be pretty tough on their mental
Very
health.
tough,
What
very
do you think?
tough. And it's one of the
Yeah.
reasons when the government were kind of playing with the idea of, oh, everyone else can go out of lockdown apart from the over 70s. It's why
Mm.
there was, I mean, come on,
Yeah.
no, that's just immoral. You and when you're 70 as well, each year of your life, it feels like, you don't know how much time you have left. None of us know how much time we have,
Mm.
but when you're older, you think, okay, each moment I have with my grandkids or whoever is actually really,
It's
really
precious. Yeah.
precious, so
Mm.
precious. And um, it's this is the not just on the over 70s, but on anyone who feels lonely or alone.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's been incredibly hard, and it's getting harder. And so um, for them also, they're not that familiar. Speaking to someone on Zoom is not the same as being in the same room anyway.
No.
But not having the physical closeness to people as well is incredibly challenging.
Yeah. That's there. There were three things that I heard on a podcast 'cause I do podcasts and I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I don't even know where I heard it. But
Podcast life.
yeah, there were three things that this guy mentioned. Was number one was for our health was nutrition. The next was social, because we're social beings. Geez, and the third was nature. So, like you said earlier, people getting out, doing longer walks, being in nature, I think helps the mental wellness.
Definitely.
And then, yeah, that it's interesting that we are social creatures, even though we can socialize over Zoom. It's a lot more powerful being in person with someone. How's
Much
it
more
affecting your
powerful.
business?
My business, thankfully, is going absolutely fine. I mean, I didn't know when we went into lockdown, I assumed it would really, really slow down, but it hasn't. And
Yeah.
in fact, I mean, if I have to think about the main inquiries I'm getting since lockdown are mostly eating disorders. So
Mm,
about 90% eating disorders, because an eating disorder is an anxiety response in essence. When you have an eating disorder, you're seeking to have control. And so the lockdown situation is immensely challenging for people. So they're having a lot of flare-ups of eating disorder behaviors. So there's been a massive influx of patients with eating disorders, and then some patients who want to use this as an opportunity to improve their eating behaviors.
So I've got a
Yeah.
question about that eating disorder then. So is that almost self-diagnosed in a way? So someone might come to you and say, I think I've got an eating disorder. Is it?
Both. So patients who've already had a previous diagnosis of anorexia or bulimia or so on, and they've gone into somewhat of a remission, they've found that their behaviors have really flared up. So if someone's bulimic, they're binging and purging a lot more. If someone's anorexic, they suddenly find it really hard to eat more than 500, 1,000 calories a day. And then there's the group of people who suspect they've got disordered eating, in that they're feeling
Mm,
tortured and tormented with constantly having to analyze and think about what they're eating, how they're eating. Is this okay? Is this not okay? Is this too many calories? The endless questions, instead of just being able to intuitively flow with
mm,
what they want to eat. And so they're reaching out for help because they just can't cope anymore. And
mm,
then they can't cope anymore because they're in their own company. And so they've got none of the distraction they would have had before by
yeah.
being in an office with people, or having
Mm,
their eating behaviors normalized by socialized eating with others. So if you're in an office and you brought for lunch a sandwich and some vegetables and, I don't know, some chocolate, you see everyone around you has something quite similar. Even if you feel like you've lost your own instincts in being able to judge whether that's an adequate amount of food or the right kind of food, you can look at everybody else and think, it's okay. It's pretty
mm,
much the same.
mhm,
Whereas when you're at home, your mind can go crazy if you're overthinking about things.
mm,
Is this okay? Is
mm.
this not okay? So they just need to check in with someone who's going to help them make a plan and help them be answerable and help them ask the difficult questions about why are they feeling so anxious.
So about, can we get into the topic of actual food, not food, well, maybe food choices, but I was thinking more particularly hypertension. So I was like, and I should know what hypertension is, but I was like, what is hypertension? Oh, high blood pressure.
High
So I had
blood
to, yeah,
pressure.
yes, like, why is high? I've been listening to a guy, Dr. Chris Berg. He's actually a chiropractor. He's not a medical doctor, but he's got a lot of YouTube videos out, and he's talking about zinc, which is very vital to your body's immune system, and
Yeah,
vitamin D. Do you
yeah,
speak to your clients particularly about getting the right vitamins from the right foods?
absolutely. Absolutely. So that's always been my job. It's always been my job to optimize people's immunity. And there's lots of talk now about boosting immunity. There's no such thing as boosting immunity. We want the immune system to work in a balanced way, which means, inflammation is important. It's an important process when you have an infection, for example, like COVID. So always talking about optimizing immunity. And so zinc, of course, a really important player in the immune system. And often vegans lack zinc if they're not doing the diet properly. And vitamin D, absolutely vital. And that's demonstrated and will continue to be demonstrated, I'm sure, as they do more analysis in terms of why we're unfortunately losing a lot of ethnic minority members of society to COVID. Because living in the UK, very hard to get enough vitamin D when you have darker skin.
Oh, right.
Particularly in this season, where now we've got the right, now that we're in May, we've got the right UV rays coming through until around the end of September to make vitamin D. but everyone's at the end of their vitamin D pot, so to speak, in February, March, April. And so even more vulnerable to having negative side effects to just a normal infection, whether it's the flu, whether it's a cold. So now with COVID, it's, you know, uncharted territory. We don't know what we're dealing with, but I'm absolutely sure that we'll have bodies and bodies of research coming out saying vitamin D was a player in that. So
Definitely, because
all my
a friend of
patients,
mine,
I push for vitamin D anyway, but now with COVID, anyone I've got from an ethnic minority, I'm like, you must take this.
get outside without your shirt on, even though it's
They
freezing.
get that shirt off, which becomes more problematic because a lot of these people come from Islamic communities where they dress very modestly and they cover their hair and sometimes cover their faces, and so it's even harder when women are told they have to dress modestly. They can't get sun exposure, which over the years it really builds up.
Yeah, that's it. So a friend of mine who lives in, get this right now, Sweden, I believe, and they've got a different way of lockdown. Not really a lockdown,
Not
more
really.
social distancing. He mentioned that in that country, the toll of winter is coming into February, March, and only now into April, May does it get better. That people are like that, you know, they've had enough of winter. And if the country had to go into lockdown at the time for elderly people, it would have been worse. So I think, what do
Deadly
you think about
problem.
that?
I think he makes a very good point. I think it's a
Yeah.
very hard balance to strike, to know what to do in terms of protecting people from a virus like this. When we know that, especially in the very northern countries, they have so much darkness, and we know what darkness does to us. It doesn't make us feel very happy as time goes by. You know, what would be the toll on people's mental health? And, you know, we mustn't be mistaken that poor mental health is a killer. It's an absolute killer. And so, you know, I don't envy the government. I think the government have done an appalling job in this country in managing the virus, really appalling. But I don't envy them having to make those kind of decisions, because it's like, well, how do you weigh it up? So I can imagine why that was an important deciding factor over in Sweden, certainly.
So you were talking, if we go back to zinc, because I was quite interested about that, and I'm not sure, you mentioned people who are vegan.
Yeah.
Is it because meat is like got zinc in it, and maybe seafood and that? Is that the reason?
Yeah. And so it's hard in a vegan diet to meet the same levels of zinc as you would quite easily and organically eating a diet with animal foods in it. And so any of my vegan patients, we have to be very diligent and mindful about getting enough zinc. So things like pumpkin seeds are excellent sources of zinc. Trouble is with plant proteins, they always come bound with fiber. And fiber is a really important thing for the human diet. However, when you've got minerals and vitamins coming in with fiber, particularly minerals, sometimes some of those minerals can get swept out of the body bound to the fiber.
Okay.
So things like zinc and calcium and iron and so on, which is why over time, unless a vegan's really checking and really being diligent, they can, again, over time, become more and more deficient in certain minerals and very run down. I mean, the same can be said for a meat eater who's only eating meat and not eating enough vegetables. You know, it's every single diet type needs to have a certain level of diligence about it. It's just easier when we're talking about the major minerals like zinc and iron. It's just a lot easier to get that in a diet that contains animal foods, without having to overthink it in the same way as you do when you're on a vegan diet.
So I'm not sure if this is something that everyone's experienced, but since we've been in lockdown, my family, we've had a few bouts of illnesses, and maybe like the cold, kids have had a bit of tonsillitis. And we're thinking, sure, where's this all coming from? You know, like, is it coming from the packages that we bring home from shopping? But I read there's a lot of, I think, not fake news, but hypotheses running around about what's going on and what's the best course of action. And one YouTube video was saying, if we do stay apart from each other too much, then we also run the risk of not catching each other's germs and then building our immune system. I'm not sure if there's any credit to that, but what's your thoughts on us still getting sick even though we're isolated?
Well, there's also, it's important to understand that we're not these kind of sterile beings that are walking around. We all have
Yeah.
pathogenic bacteria living within us. So the guy that invented the germ theory, there was this whole debate about whether it's the terrain or whether it's the germ, because why do some people get sick and other people don't get sick? If we're all carrying strep, for example, why do some of us get an infection, some of us don't? And so there's a lot to be said for the terrain, the overall health of that person, the overall health of their immune system. And so it might be that someone's carrying a germ, and they might have a few nights of not going to bed on time, or something that lowers the immune system, having some kind of stress, and then that pathogen's able to flourish. Or they might get a cut, and for some reason they're run down at the same time, so the pathogen can flourish in that cut when normally the immune system would just take care of it. So it might be that you've got 4 kids, right? So
Yep.
it's there's lots of little germs around, and they will exchange between them, or one of them might get run down, and it will flare up, so to speak. The other thing is, they're coming in our environment all the time, plants, packages. This is not a sterile environment, and it's a wonderful argument about the socializing does build the immune system. And there is going to be I think I'm going to have anxiety about returning to normal life.
Really?
Not about mixing with people and catching diseases, more about, like, I think I've got used to a more quiet life now, and and I look back on my crazy mornings of, like, waking up and, like, showering and lunch boxes and breakfasts and getting everyone out the door and arriving at clinic for 9 a.m. and I don't want to do that again.
There has to be maybe some kind of reform when it comes to the time that kids get to school, or the number of hours they do. I don't know.
Something, because, like, I'm thinking, God, I don't want to go back to that like in 6th gear. Like, I was hanging up the washing a couple of weeks ago. I did laugh, and I was doing it really, really quickly. And suddenly I thought, why am I doing it so quickly?
Yeah.
Because I'm so used to hanging it out after clinic before I go and do the school run. So I've got like 2 seconds to hang it out before I have to run and get the kids. I was like, I've got nothing to rush for. So I just, like, did it leisurely. Then I lay down on the sunbed with a book, and I was like, this is nice.
There's some really good perks about this, isn't there?
I know.
I was going to ask you about, we spoke briefly there about the pathogens. And
Yes.
this is what, I'm obviously hearing a lot of stuff. I watch a lot of stuff. So I just want to get this right, because sometimes I'll soak it in, but then when I try to regurgitate it to either my clients or to my podcast or my page, I might get it wrong. But what this Chris Berg was saying is that your gut biome diversity is quite rich when you're young. So especially if you're a breastfed baby, you get that rich diversification of good microbes in your stomach. And then as you get older and older, so you're into your 60s and 70s and 80s, the pathogens increase and the diversity of gut biome decreases and the pathogens increase. Is that true? And how can we combat that as we get older?
I don't know if it's true. I think it would really depend on the person. Some babies are born and they're never inoculated with a diverse microbiome because they've had to be born through a C-section. I'm not criticizing C-sections. They are life-saving, incredible procedures, but it does have a more negative side effect on the baby's initial microbiome, which can be mended. And then if they're bottle-fed versus breastfed, again, and then if they've had lots of courses of antibiotics, a child by the age of 4 or 5 might have really not a diverse microbiome. And so that needs to be worked on. I don't think it's inevitable that you get more pathogenic bacteria in your gut as you get older, unless you are taking a lot of pharmaceuticals, a lot of antibiotics, have high levels of stress, which we know erode the good bacteria in the gut, have a diet that is boring and the same, so you don't have a good diversity of plant foods, which are incredible gifts to the gut. What's so interesting is this dynamic where people might feel like their gut is upset when they eat different fibers, so they stick to the safe zone and they don't challenge it, which means over time, as your diet narrows, so does the diversity in the gut. So I would say it's totally preventable if people are mindfully working on, like I ask my patients, go to the market or go to the supermarket and get different vegetables that you don't usually have. Like, go to the supermarket when you have an extra half an hour, get radishes if you don't normally have them, get fennel, get
Mm.
celery, get things that, don't just have the same things again and again,
Yeah.
because what we need is the diversity. So no, I think if people are really, I'm not against pharmaceuticals. I often, have patients who are seeing me because they're on pharmaceuticals. They want to come off them, but we really need to pace it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there can be an amazing boost, or there can be an amazing space holder while someone has to keep showing up to work to support their family, but they don't want to stay on them for life. So if people are mindful of trying to use lifestyle medicine instead of pharmaceuticals wherever possible.
Okay.
And then so lifestyle medicine will include good sleep, good movement, good eating the vast majority of the time, then I don't see why they would lose the diversity in their gut.
Okay.
If they're mindful of that. I just think life becomes so heavy on us that we lose the space and the time to be able to practice lifestyle medicine in the way that we would like to.
Yeah.
And so we end up leaning on these pharmaceuticals or lifestyle kind of choices that do erode the gut bacteria. And this is what lockdown is also exposing. What are we willing to go back to? Like, what have we managed to do during lockdown that we always wanted to do?
Mm-hmm.
And what are we not willing to give up
Yeah.
when we go back to life? Who wants to sit in a car for an hour and a half when they can work even more efficiently from home?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I'm hearing that from all my patients, that whether they're academics, whether they're lawyers, whether they're accountants, they are getting, unless they have small kids, which is a nightmare, to have to work while taking care of kids. If they don't have children, or if the children are being taken care of by somebody else, they are getting more done in 4 hours from home than they got done in 6-7 hours in the office, and they're not commuting, and they're home cooking. So I think, I have some patients who are CEOs of companies, and they are saying they are completely changing work structure after this.
Oh wow! So they're the game changers, because they're the people who can
Yes,
call the shots, right?
exactly. And that's why I've said to them, you can make the decisions. So they want people, to come and check in once a week or something like that. But the rest of the time, you have to trust people. You're giving them a job. What's the point of employing someone you don't trust?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, if the work is getting done, and if the company is moving forward, then what is the difference?
Exactly. And it's also helping people to take less
Be
sick
well,
days off, probably, because
of
they're not
course,
as stressed.
and be happier,
Yeah.
and work-life balance. I mean, we've known for a long time that people are more productive in less hours than they are in tons of hours. We know this. But there seems to be some kind of culture of control. And I don't know if you have, I've definitely had micromanagers in the past. They give me an allergic reaction. I can't bear working for people like that. You don't want to feel like a little child at school.
No.
Like, you're an adult.
Yeah.
If you're not trusted, what's the point?
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you're not trustworthy, what the hell are you doing? Like, why would you behave like that?
Grow
You need
up.
to ask
Yeah.
yourself some questions. Seriously, you've taken a job, do it.
Yeah.
So there's no argument for us to have to go back to a lifestyle where there's so much illness, because people's lives are not balanced, and that's tragic. And it really takes a toll. You think about the NHS, and you think about how overburdened it is by lifestyle related disease, how much more money there would be for PPE, and how much more money there'd be for infectious disease and genetic diseases if people were given the opportunity to practice lifestyle medicine in their lives. And like I said at the beginning, people want to move. People want to eat well. There simply isn't capacity, or we're not taught in school, or we're not taught in general in culture how to manage it. We're supposed to be these superhumans. Like, I get very offended if anyone calls me a superwoman, because I am not. I know that when I'm, living a too fast a life, it's taking a great toll on my health, and I'm not willing to do that. So, my house is more of a mess than it should be, or so on. I have to prioritize in order to keep myself well. We have this culture that thinks we should be these super overproductive humans, and we just can't do it. We can't.
This is, what do you think about, because I was just thinking about what the major causes for people going into hospitals. It's probably stress related or something like that. But so, and I love that topic, but what do you think about us preparing ourselves as a society for the next outbreak? I mean, we should seriously be considering what the next thing, right? I mean, we shouldn't just
I
think
mean,
as the
if there's
once off.
if there's a second wave of COVID, or in general the next virus,
The next virus that could be even worse, perhaps. I don't know.
I think it's an amazing opportunity now for people to, when the time is right, to really campaign that we need major changes in society. We need major changes in pollution. We need major changes in how we live, and that will help to prevent another outbreak.
So on the way that we live, right? And yes. I'm not too sure how strongly you feel about this, but I feel quite strongly about it. Our farming ways, the ways of farming. I think there's a lot of land that's destroyed for crops that we don't necessarily need. You know, all the wheat, we don't need to eat as much wheat as we do. We don't have to eat as much meat as we do. The corn that's grown to just feed the animals.
Yeah.
What's your view on our future of food production? Is there a way we could have natural gardens and what they call it? They used to call it I forgot the name now. Agriculture, but not agriculture. Agro farming. I can't even remember the word now.
Well, I mean, there's the whole you know, I think humans ideally are mainly plant-based but have some animal protein.
Okay.
I think for me that's the ideal diet. You know, people need to stop thinking in terms of extremes, carnivore versus vegan, and start thinking we are all built to be plant-based with some animal protein. And then when we're looking at that, we're thinking animal protein that has been grass-fed, naturally fed. We don't need to grow corn for cattle. They can eat grass because we have enough space if people just control their eating.
Yeah.
And so there's polyculture versus monoculture. So what's so destructive to agriculture is when you're growing the same crop field after field after field.
Yeah.
It absolutely destroys diversity, and it destroys the diversity of the soil as well, which has major impacts on the environment. So introducing a kind of polyculture where you're growing, you know, one type of plant next to another type of plant, and then you have animals grazing in the field next to it. I mean, it's just the most beautiful thing, and farming is so important for that. I think I really feel for the farmers, and you know what governments put them through. It's very sad. So no, I would very much hope for a future where people grow their own food, or we just eat local meat and local dairy products and local fruits and vegetables wherever possible. And you know, you got to think about pollution levels and the shipment of foods all the way across the world. Why?
Yeah.
And you think it always makes me, you know, chia seeds and things like that, which are lovely, but we have plenty of superfoods in England. We have plums, we have apples. You know, we don't need to have these things flown halfway across the world and taken from the people for which that is their basic staple.
Yeah. So I bought some kiwi fruits. I wonder, they're not local, are they? And I was
They're probably from New Zealand or Italy.
Yeah.
But I have a patient who grew kiwis in his allotment in Cambridgeshire, and he brought me some to clinic.
Oh wow, amazing!
That blew my mind because I didn't know that was possible. And he's like, "Of course it's possible, Dalia."
I wonder if I'll put some. Apparently, because I've just started an allotment about 2 months ago. Because we were like, nice. Oh yeah, what's happening? We might not have food. Quick, get an allotment. And I think a lot of people have done that, right? And so
that's brilliant.
Allotments are buzzing at the moment. And I ordered some topsoil from this company.
Okay.
And they said, oh, they're so busy. They've got so many deliveries. They're hiring new people. So I think people are thinking about, growing their own food.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed. A friend of mine, he got an allotment just next to me, and it was totally bare. And within 4 weeks, and these guys here, they're just amazing. He's put he's got so many things planted. He's built some structures. He's got everything going. And I'm thinking, you know what? Sky's the limit for what he can actually grow on there. And he's doing a whole lot of diversification, like you've spoken about. And it's really, it fills my heart with joy to see that happening.
Yes. But this is what I mean. People want to.
Yeah.
People want to. People want to grow their food. People want to garden. People want to move. People want to home cook. People want to. But there's just not the space in life when you've got to raise your kids, and then you're supposed to do all these activities with them, and you've got to, turn up to work, and you've got to make a certain amount of money. Unless you really want to move out of the city to some really remote place and make a real statement, it's just not society's not structured to allow people to do that. So just like your heart bursts when you see, you know, the allotment and everything, my heart bursts when I walk through Cambridge and people are out walking and scooting and rollerblading and cycling, and I think, oh my God, you know, these gorgeous oaks, and they're all in flower, and I wanted the last week I just wanted the oaks to just grow across the road. Brilliant. I just thought, God, you know, I just want this road to just disappear, and let us all walk, you know. I've always been a big walker, but you know, not everybody.
Nature is celebrating at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. It really is. And everyone's talking about, you know, the air feeling fresher and the bird song being louder. This is just a few weeks in. I mean, what I always say to my patients, and it's so true, is our bodies are so forgiving. You can spend decades in poor eating habits, poor movement habits, and you just give it a few weeks, even a few days of eating right, you start to feel better. It is amazing how forgiving. And I think nature's very forgiving as well. We really just have to allow it the capacity to heal. I am concerned about the plastic use going up though, with all the gloves and the and everything. That is a concern. But hopefully that can be controlled somehow in the next few weeks. But certainly there's a lot of scope for change.
Definitely. Yeah. And there's also companies using plastic in tarmac. So there's a new company in the UK. I've got this design for putting plastic into tarmac, and it makes the tarmac last longer. So there we go.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good. If you're going to make a road, you might as well use some waste in it.
Exactly. Dalia, it's been really great talking to you. And I think I've definitely enjoyed it a lot and gained a lot of insight into your mind and also your experience and expertise. So I just want to thank you again for being on the Lifeshot podcast. Is there any parting shots that you might want to leave with the listeners?
Parting shots? What do you mean parting shots?
Parting, not party.
Not party today, no. Maybe tonight when the kids have gone to bed.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, it's been good, Dalia. And so you get back to your clients and make the world a better place like you do every day.
I will try. Try. You too.
And
send me pictures from your allotment.
Yeah. Allotments is a big challenge, but at least I've got some people around me who can actually tell me what's going on.
Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.